is Autocomplete? Autocomplete is a tool that Oracle has created that it's available in the HCM Experience Design Studio, and it lets you default or validate data. It allows you to put data into fields that should typically be the data that would go there, or if the data in those fields isn't correct or there's discrepancies, it allows you to place error messages or warning messages on the screen. So our typical implementation process with Autocomplete is identifying the pages where that data entry is happening. For example, when hiring an employee or creating a job offer, there's a lot of data that needs to be defaulted or could be validated. There might be some data entry issues. So our recommended process would be to review those pages. And in this specific demo, we're going to be reviewing the Create Job Offer page. Then once you're on those pages, identifying the fields or scenarios where data could be defaulted or validated. Then you'd build the rule in a sandbox with HCM Experience Design Studio enabled. Test those pages, and then if everything looks well, get additional user testing, and then deploy. So in our demo, we'll be doing the review the pages, identifying several scenarios, then building some rules, and then testing. Two things to note. To actually have Autocomplete available in your Cloud HCM environment, you have to log an SR with Oracle. And they'll give you a key, a profile option key that you place in your environment. And then when you open HCM Experience Design Studio, you'll see it as a tab. A recommended item from Oracle and from ourselves as doing this several times, submitting a use case prior to development to Oracle to get that approval will ensure the functionality that you're trying to do the Autocomplete rule for is supported. And they'll also offer some tips and advice potentially about your rule. So I'm going to head over into hiring, which is the recruiting area. And I'm going to pull up a requisition that has several applicants on it. We're going to look at what that create a job offer flow looks like. See, we have 13 applications. Each environment might be different with the flex fields, the fields that are visible, but this just gives you a taste for what it could look like in your environment. Okay, so I'm going to go to 13 of our active applications. I go to this one, this applicant, and I'm going to say create job offer. Okay, so first we're going to go through this little questionnaire, and we could pull all of these different objects in. We might have information that could be defaulted or validated within them, but for our demo, we're just going to pull up salary and offer letter. Okay, so then we're going to hit continue. So this is where the Autocomplete will come into place. We'll go through the different sections, and when you're going through the different sections, you want to be thinking about what the section is and what data in here isn't populating already, and what data is there sometimes discrepancies with. The when and why section's a little interesting. Currently, you cannot default data into this section at all. But maybe there is some validation about employee start date. We've seen this at several clients where start dates need to be, potentially future dated. They might need to be occur on a specific date. Maybe they can't be too future dated, too far in advance. So that could be a scenario where you have a validation rule about this date. All the other fields in this current flow are populated, so not really too much there. And the recruiting's interesting because depending on how recruiting's set up, template or the job or position may determine a lot of the defaults that are already happening. So that may vary from, some core HR pages that don't have that same kind of setup. I'm going to click continue, And now we're in assignment unit. Note we have a business unit, US Business Unit 1. And again, most of these fields are defaulted based on, I believe it's based on the job or the requisition template. So there's not really too much that we would do here. Maybe reporting establishment. Maybe we know, anytime the business unit is this and the job is this, the reporting establishment must be this. So that could be, a defaulting rule that could be considered. Okay, we're going to continue on to salary. So salary is a one that I've seen quite commonly used for autocomplete using defaults. So in our demo, we are going to look at this business unit and say, we know all these people in this business unit are in this salary basis. Now, maybe we need to look at business unit and job or business unit, job, and grade to really determine that. But, for the demo purposes, we're going to be doing it with this business unit. So continue on. Taking a moment. Okay, so currently salary basis is not defaulted, and you'd have to select it from a drop-down list. So for our demo, we're going to say, if they're in US 1 business unit, they're going to be US 1 annual salary. Salary amount's likely something that you won't be able to default, but maybe there's some validation that could happen there. Oops. Here, I'll just we're not going to submit this one, but we'll just do US salary 1. And when I click continue, I get a warning about salary, the salary amount. So one thing to note is there's all sorts of delivered rules and functionality and configuration that might also be in effect on the pages, and those would overrule any autocomplete. So those would be a separate thing. And some of the scenarios that we run into actually can be accomplished via configuration rather than autocomplete, but just something to consider. Oh no, and I must have our offer letter on already. I meant to have that off. So it's currently defaulting to Vision Generic Offer Letter. So we'll take a look at that rule. This offer letter was a drop-down box, but because we're in USB 1, we have a autocomplete rule that has it defaulted here. Okay, so that's basically the first step in the process that we recommend. Identifying that page where a lot of data validation is happening, data entry / validation is needed. And going through it kind of slowly and identifying what fields might, be entered incorrectly quite a bit or need some validating, or what fields could be defaulted based on the information we currently have. So once we have those pieces of information, we would submit a use case with Oracle requesting our specific, scenarios. But we're going to pretend we submitted those use cases and now we're off to build. So we would we'd create a sandbox first and have HCM Experience Design Studio enabled. And so you can see I already have a sandbox that I'm in, and I'm going to be entering in HCM Experience Design Studio. Okay. So we talked about salary basis, that would be a good one to default. So in HCM Experience Design Studio, you have several different tabs. Transaction Design Studio allows you to make the fields on the page visible or not visible. And you'll notice that Transaction Design Studio, you make a rule per action, which typically corresponds to a page. Autocomplete rules are different. You're going to make rules within a business object. So the business objects don't necessarily correspond to one page. Many times you'll have a business object that will be on multiple pages. So there is some, there's a learning curve in identifying what business object to select for your rule. Again, that logging that use case with Oracle is great because they will often advise you which business object to use. Based on experience, the salary basis section is intuitively, or the salary section is named salary. So not too tricky to find, which is nice. Okay, so we are in our rules editor, and I've created a few rules, but they're all inactive. So the first step you are going to do after you identify your business object is to add a new rule. So there's 4 different rule types. So we've got 2 that look like they're, or actually just 1 that says defaulting. So object defaulting rule, this happens before you enter into a section, it will default. You also have a field modification rule, which also allows you to default, but that rule is is best used if you're already in a section and you need data from a field in that same section. So this field modification rule type will allow you to default based on information that you'd only have within that section. Object validation rule type can be used when you're exiting a section and you want to validate that the data in that section, so in that when and why, the assignment or that salary section looks right. Field validation rule type isn't as commonly used, but that's most useful when you want to compare old and new values of a field. And the last note on these different rule types, you can add warnings. If you want a hard error that won't allow the user to continue, you'd want to use object validation or field validation. But if you want the user to be able to continue with their rule or with their data entry, even if they entered in something that doesn't look right, you'd want to use a field modification rule type. This is the only rule type that allows you to do warnings. So in our salary basis, if you remember, we were going through and we would had our assignment information, and then we entered the salary section. So the assignment information is what we talked about determining what the salary basis would be. We had that business unit in the previous section. So we could, since we had all the information in the previous section, we can do an object defaulting rule. So now we're in our rules editor. So we can name this, really anything. It does have to be unique. Okay, and you can add a description. You'll notice you have the rule type and the business object right here, and it's currently set to active. So within the rule logic, you have these little, you have a few different pieces of functionality. The first one is this down icon, and this allows you to add next or add before, and it allows you to add blocks or lines of code. Not really code, a user-friendly line of logic. So we can add new variable types. We can add a condition block. We can add that error message. We can call a function. And so we'll be doing quite a few of these different steps. So our first step, so we want to default salary basis based on business unit. So we're going to define a variable. So we're going to say, by default, you always get this first string var variable, but we're going to add next. So we want a special type of variable called a row. Row variables are really interesting. They allow you to grab data from other business objects. So in salary, we don't have access to assignment unless we create a row variable. So I'm going to say row var and name it assignment. The rest of our variables are pretty standard, like string and integer. You'll notice here we have an XYZ button. So you can press on that button and change this object to a function. So we're going to say change to function, get first row, salary, get assignment. So now we have made a bridge to the assignment. And within assignment, if you're familiar with the tables behind assignment, you'll kind of know that a lot of the data lives in Perl assignment M, And a lot of those pieces of data are IDs rather than actual values. So we actually need to do another row variable to grab the business unit name. So here we have the business unit ID, but we want the actual name. So I'm going to call this business unit. And now I can grab on that row var assignment that I just created. I can get the row related to business unit ID. And from that, I can grab the business unit name. One other thing I'm going to create is action types. So I mentioned that, a lot of this data or this defaulting or validating is happening on pages, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen on the data entry within the pages. It could happen when data is being loaded via HSDL or HDL. The typical use case is manual data entry within pages. So that's what we're going to focus on. And to make sure that we're filtering out the HSDL loads, HDL loads, we're going to add something called an HCM param function. So change this to a function. And there's a few different function types. There's standard functions that you could, modify your string or your, integer. And then there's some global functions. So the one that I'm talking about is get string value from HCM params. There's great Oracle documentation on this. We enter in mgroovy action type code, and that's actually going to advise us on what page that we are currently on. So we're going to add that in there. There's one other function that can be very helpful. Our initial pass at this is going to be pretty simple, but I'm going to show one, in case you have, you have more than one salary basis to default. Maybe you have 60, and it's a bit more complicated than the simple approach. I'm going to show a tip for that. Okay, so now we have our variables. Now I am going to add a condition block. So I'm going to save right here. And instead of, this currently is giving me a list of the fields that are available within the salary business object, I'm going to actually change it using this XYZ to a variable. And I'm going to say if string var action type equals emp add pwk. So this empl add pwk will identify that we're on that create job offer flow for creating a pending worker. So that's what that little line does. Then I'm also going to add another condition in and say variable value, this row var business unit is not null. So anytime you're calling a row variable and you're doing a condition block with it, you'd want to typically say it's not null, so it can actually, it doesn't go through any of this logic unless there's a value populated there. So I'm going to change this to this XYZ to a variable. And then I'm going to change this variable to the business unit. Oh, sorry, actually, oh yeah, that we could do that, or we could actually pull the business unit name. We'll do this, so, and we'll say is not null. Okay. So then right here, we're going to add another, condition block. And here we are going to say, we'll delete this. A lot of times you can't delete the line until you enter something new. So we're going to say if business unit name equals that US 1 business unit, our specific scenario that we were looking at. So I'm going to say change this field. I'm going to pull from that row var business unit name. US 1 business unit. Okay, so if it's equal to US 1 business unit, then in this condition block, or in this, I'm going to assign value to field. So instead of salary action occurrence ID, assign value to the salary basis. And now, since I have this line, I can delete this. Variable value 1, delete. Okay, so I think we said US 1 annual salary. Okay. And then I'm going to get rid of those else blocks. You'll notice they don't have a down arrow next to them. So I'm going to come up to the if block and click on that down arrow and say delete else block. And I'm going to do the same thing with this else block. Okay, so now we have our rule built, and we're grabbing assignment, we're grabbing business unit. We could also add, if your salary basis is determined by job, we could easily add that in here and add another condition. If you have multiple different, this is very simple. We're only defaulting one salary basis based on one business unit, but you could add additional if, add next, add another if block. If you have, say you have like 60 different, salary bases, it would take a minute to add all of those into this rules editor. So in that scenario, what we'd want to do is create a business object function. So we're going to show that right after we test this one out. Okay, but for demo's sake, we're going to leave it at that. And we're going to save and close. And now we're going to test that rule. Say done. You'll notice also, so these are the rules we created. Oracle has delivered rules too. So you can get some ideas based on their delivered rules. You can open them, actually you duplicate them, and then you can look at their code. Okay, so let's go into hiring. And we're going to go into 797. Okay, so let's go into our active applications. Okay, and we are going to go to one of our applicants. So these might not, be valid scenarios where this is a new person that hasn't been reviewed. Likely, the applicant would be in a further state before you're offering a job. But just again, for a test case, we'll use this. We're going to do salary, and we are going to look at offer letter. And so this one we already have a rule that's defaulting the offer letter. Okay, so remember we could put some validation around start date, even other fields here we could validate, but we can't default in this section. So this must be a current worker because our actions are different than our previous one where we have to actually add an assignment. Okay, USB 1. Okay, so now when we get to salary, if our rule worked, we should see, and we did not see it defaulted. So we thought we were going to see US annual salary. It wasn't. So now we get into debugging. Let's check out our rule real quick and see if there's anything that stands out. A lot of times I might have, is null around something that shouldn't be null. I do want to check out our HCM params. So this is the Oracle documentation that I mentioned. That we'll take a closer look at that. So let's go into salary. Okay. And see if anything stands out. And one other, I'm not necessarily the case in this, there's probably an error in the code, but sometimes there is a delay in the rules. So sometimes logging out and logging back in might be the reason it works. Maybe there is an error in the code. So I'm going to head here. So this is configuring and extending HCM autocomplete rules. And we are going to take a look, or checklist for troubleshooting. We're not going to go there, but we're going to double check our functions. Autocomplete rules variable. Okay, so that HCM params, get values using HCM params is the one that we did. And I just want to make sure we have EMPL add P. This should be our page. And then let's double check. Here's the different HCM params names that you could enter in. So we have Groovy action type code. So yeah, lots of great documentation out there from Oracle. Action type. It is case sensitive too. This Groovy action type code is case sensitive. That looks correct to me. Okay, get assignment. And I think I have it. EMPL add. Okay. US 1 business unit looks correct. Okay, so everything, assignment, business unit is not known. And so it all looks correct to me. So we can potentially go into some debugging, but we're just going to log out and then log back in to see if that might do the trick. And we'll go to our hiring an employee or creating a job offer. 797 is our requisition. Let's find an applicant that doesn't have an offer yet. So these rules will fire when the business object is initially created, the object default when the business object is initially created. So we'll have to find a new application that doesn't have an offer yet. Okay, so let's try this one. Job offer, salary, offer letter, continue. Oh, I actually see what happened. We already had an employee. So our previous worker was not a new worker. So we could modify the action type based on, the rehires to ensure that it's getting all the scenarios. So that's with our HCM params action type. So this one should work when we go through it. If you wanted to default, in the when and why section, or not default, you can't, but validate, it would be the when and why business object. Assignment info would be worker assignment. And then salary, the one that we did, is the salary object. And now we see we've got the US 1 annual salary. So that's great. So that's, very simple rule. But say, you have a lot more salaries or salary bases, and, they're based on more than just potentially the business unit. So you can do something called a business object function. So to do that, you need to have configure business objects enabled in your sandbox. So you'll navigate there, and then you'll find your object. In this case, our object is salary. So we will edit, go to the settings and say edit business logic. And over on this down icon, we are going to do an object function. And we are going to add a new object function. So the object function expects Groovy code in this edit script. And so I have some ready, and it's basically saying, if business unit equals US business unit 1, then return this ID. So in this case, it is expecting the salary basis ID, not the salary basis name. So there is additional work where you have to identify all the salary basis IDs. And then we have healthcare equals US business unit, return this salary basis ID. And then if business unit equals university US business unit, then return this HE US salary. So we basically create Groovy script that does a mapping for our salary. basis is. I did not copy it. Let's copy it real quick. We give it a name. We're going to say salary basis. And we don't want it to return void. We want it to return a long. And we don't want to make it privileged. That will limit, who can actually trigger that function. So if the person, going through that page doesn't have the right privileges, then it won't work. We are going to add a parameter. So we're going to pass in business unit from our autocomplete rule. And it's currently, based on the script, I'm calling it BU. And it's the business unit name is a string. So we're going to say it's string type. And now we are going to be able to grab the business unit from our autocomplete rule and then return the salary basis ID based on that business unit. If you had additional parameters that you could pass those as well. So job, grade, you could add all of those here and then call them in your autocomplete and pass them to the function that way. So then we're going to say validate and script parse successfully and say save and close. And now we're going to go back into our Experience Design Studio and head back to our rule, salary rule, salary demo salary basis for business unit. Okay, so instead of adding all these if conditions for all our different scenarios, what we can do is now we're still gonna create the variable within our if condition, and we're gonna add it right up here. So we're gonna say add before, add a new variable type, and this time it's gonna be a long. Okay, and so we're gonna say salary basis ID. And here's where we get to call our newly created object function. So we've got our standard functions, global functions, and now we have that object function that we just created. And we're going to, so it's called salary basis. And if you remember from our code, it's expecting a business unit name. So we're going to change this XYZ to a field. And we're going to pull business unit name from our row var business unit. And now we can say, we can basically remove this whole if and just add next and say assign value to field. And say salary basis ID or salary basis. And we're going to change this to a variable. And now we're just saying, look at our object function and look at all that mapping, and now just return assist. So, depending on the length of, how many salary basis IDs you have, this might be the way to go. Or, any scenario where you have a lot of mapping, and potentially if that mapping is replicated over and over again, you can create one object function. You do need to create an object function per business object that you're using for each autocomplete business object that you want to call it in. You would need to create a new business object function. We'll save and close it, and then we could test it and make sure that it's actually calling it. There's a lot of great Oracle documentation that I referenced. So Cloud Customer Connect has lots of super helpful sessions on troubleshooting. They have a recruiting specific Cloud Customer session. You can also ask questions on the rules forum. There's white papers. There's that configure and extend guide. There's trainings on Cloud Customer Connect. This is a link to the Autocomplete program application guide where you would enable the or submit the use cases, how to enable autocomplete. So this tells you how to, submit that SR, get that profile option ID, and get it, in your environment. And then here's a little bit about the rules forum. Definitely follow us. We're on all social media. Join our mailing list, and definitely visit our website, elire.com. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of the day.